Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another Sober in Seattle podcast with Stephen and Nancy. And today we are going to be talking about step 9. Hi, Stephen and Nancy.
Hey, Lara, thanks again for the invitation.
Hey, Lara.
And so, like you said, step 9, and made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And I'm not going to tell any of Nancy's stories, but between us, we actually have a lot of experience with step 9. We were the tornado that they talk about in the book, roaring through the lives of others. But I want to say a couple things about step 9 first. I was a little bit confused, but not concerned about what's an apology and what's an amend. And I wasn't concerned that maybe I didn't know the difference, but I've come to find out that there is. And I've come to see that an apology has been probably part of every amends I've made. But an amend certainly hasn't been part of every apology. And I found just from being in AA for a while and stuff, especially if the topic's on amends, I can use the words interchangeably, but they're at times when it's really not appropriate. Meaning, if I spoke sharply to somebody where I knew I was out of line, I could apologize for it, and call it an amend. Oh, hey, I made an amend to Bobby Joe yesterday because whatever. And the difference being, it was easy for me to see an amend as a change. And the way it was, I'm sure with a lot of people, it was like an amendment to the Constitution. There's a change. And if I spoke sharply with somebody, part of my apology might be, hey, I didn't get any sleep last night, or whatever, just to minimize my part. And so I possibly have called many things amends that weren't amends. They were apologies, but no underlying change was made, so it didn't happen again. Okay, now in our big book, I've seen that the big book breaks amends down into 4 categories. The order the big book presents them in is business acquaintances and friends, people we hated, people we owe money to, or institutions we owe money to, and then family and loved ones. Of course, when I was being brought through the book the first time, I wanted family and loved ones first. It's like in my mind, and of course, like a lot of other people, maybe old girlfriends or whatever. I want to get to those first, and it just made sense to me because the people closest to me perhaps suffered the most, and so I want to get them taken care of. What I didn't realize was the sensibility, the way that our book's laid out, because if you do amends in the order that it's presented in the book, as a general guideline, by the time you get to your family and loved ones, they've already seen the change. And it's not one more, I'm sorry that I did this, I'm sorry I did that, and I'm not going to do it anymore, or however that used to go about. Okay, so in general, and I have a lot of stories about each of those categories, but I'll tell a quick one and then give it to Nancy. It says we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. They're talking about business acquaintances and friends. Well, I had a partner for 12 years in the car business, and he was a good guy. And I wasn't anywhere near the good partner to him as he was to me. And We parted terms when I was 90 days sober, and it was not a pleasant parting. And so for 3 years, I sponsored myself, so I wasn't making amends to anybody. But in the fourth year, which was 1990, in fact, I remember the exact day in August it was when I met with him. And I had gone over step 8, probably was the most time-consuming steps in all my steps, because the way I was brought through, that became to become willing to make to amends. It's all set. My drafts were written over and over again till they came out in a sane way. So, at any rate, I met with him. We met at a restaurant, and in the 4 years that we had split up, and all 4 of them I was in AA. He had to close down some of our other businesses that we were partners in. Well, one way of looking at it is because I wasn't there doing my share, and he couldn't do it on his own, or didn't have the energy anymore to do it on his own. So those businesses closed down. I don't know the financial heartache that I might have caused him, but I know some of the things I did. I know some of the actual money costs that I did to him, and I know where I fell short as a partner. So we met at this restaurant, and I can't remember the amount of money that I thought I owed him, but it was a substantial amount, like way more than $10,000. And at this point, I had nothing except I had $25 cash, because it was suggested, because of my particular financial place, that don't write him a check that'll bounce, Steve. So stay with cash. So I met him at this restaurant, and I was terrified. What's he going to order? Because I have to pay, I have to pick up the tab, and I was broke. And so I'm ordering water and, whatever Byron got, I don't know. But I went through what I had rehearsed many times. And at the end, I said, here's what I did. Here's an amount of money that I think I at least owe you. And I had to tell him, because of my poor financial decisions and all that, I don't have it right now to pay you back, but I'm going to make a conscious effort to pay you frequently. And then I didn't know how I was going to tell him about it. Here's $25. How's that against whatever the amount was? It was over 10,000. Any rate, towards the end of how he listened to what I had to say, and at the end, as it was suggested, I said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And he said, "I'll get back to you on that." And however the meeting ended, it ended, and an entire year went by, and the phone rang. And I picked it up, and of course, we were partners for so many years, I knew it was him. And he said, "Did you mean what you said?" And I said, "Yes, but I'm real suspicious now. Here's a year later." And he said, "Well, there is something you can do for me, Steve." And he said, "I have a car lot that's now vacant." And he said, "I'd like you to start it up, run it, and then, give me a cut out of your profits." And in my mind, I'm thinking, "Oh, thank God, because I'm out of the car business now forever. And, there's no way I can start up a car lot. I'm barely paying rent and child support." And what I said was, yes, I would do it. No discussion, but I can't. And I told him the reasons why. I was a little embarrassed. I can't buy any inventory or anything. He said, "I'll take care of all of that." and whatever the amount was, that from day one, $30,000 or $50,000 to buy some inventory. He just said, just come by and pick it up. And so that put me back in the car. And I remember I went there, I said, well, do we need do we need to write out an agreement or something? And he said, no. He said, you're going to do what you said or screw me over again. And so that was one of my first amends. And a year later, it was addressed by a phone call from him to me. And as a result of that, we became close like we used to be. And there was offshoots about that. Nancy knew him and his family real well too. She ended up sponsoring his daughter, who went way off the deep end in alcoholism and drug addiction. And it was just an unforeseen consequence. What they tell us in the book is 9 times out of 10, the unexpected happens. And I have, I can prove that statistic in my amends stories. But there's one story of mine, which was, I felt diffident about going to him. I was ashamed. I was filled with guilt. I wanted to do easier ones, like, can I practice up on some first? And I told Steve, it doesn't matter. We're going to do them all. So that was my kind of entrance into the amends process.
Thank you. Thanks. I remember that time very well. And it kind of highlights the importance of amends, right? I mean, every step is important, but this step, since it involves our other people in our lives, it's so important. And therefore, I think it's paramount to have a really good help in amends. Hopefully the help has been there through the previous steps. Just like at the end of step 5, then it asks, is our work solid so far? They know that we need our work to be solid in order to enter into an amend, an amend that's not going to harm somebody else or give an impression of, oh, that was thanks, but no thanks. In our 12 and 12, it says, that it's important to go out to make our amends, to possess ourselves of the right attitude. And see, the right attitude, and this was all thanks to my dear sponsors, helped me find the right attitude. And the right attitude is not self-pity or justification or rationalization. It is taking full responsibility for my part without judgment of the other. And hopefully I've gotten over some of the judgment of myself, but to be able to go out and make this amend that does have the desired effect, which is to heal a relationship if possible. Sometimes it's not always, but that isn't to stop us, because it's such an important part of the process. And it's also important for another reason, for the people that after I've made amends and I've gone on to 10, 11, and 12, that I know how to help someone else through theirs, through the experience of my own and through the learned experience that my sponsors had, whose ear was trained to hear any hint of self-pity, justification, or rationalization in my amend, in the draft that I came prepared with from my step 8. And so then it becomes easy to hear that. And we don't really even know it when we're writing those drafts, that those qualities that can kind of seep into an amend, that make it less effective. And I have not made perfect amends either. I don't mean to say that, but I did have really good help that was unrelenting on what I would say and what approach I should make. And that didn't take away all of the fear of going to actually make the amend either, but that's all right. The important thing is that we go. And there's also, the idea that, well, I pretty much just hurt myself, which is kind of unthinking, right? We aren't really looking at what it was like for the other person, truly. I remember making amends to my mother, who I put through the ringer, from a teenager on up to being a young adult, a young married woman, a middle-aged married woman, right up to the time I got into AA and after, I'm afraid. And when it became time to make amends to my mother, because my mother, she had her own issues, right? As we all do. And I could blame those. And in fact, I had stories my whole life of, well, my mother did this, so I did that. There was a lot of, and I had a big story about my mother, which through the process, I was able to see rationally. And when I did go get to make amends to her, which I'm so grateful for now, and I'll tell you, this process, it is miracle, or I should say grace and effort, because there was a lot of grace. I had thought about it and I wanted it to be genuine. And when I finally did make my amends to her, the message pretty much was, because she had known everything, every time I messed up and caused her immense embarrassment and shame. And, and I didn't know what to say to her, but what I ended up saying was that, Mom, this isn't the example that you gave me. I didn't learn this from you. I got this all on my own. And that to me felt as genuine a statement that I could to my mother. I made amends to my first husband. 29 years ago. It was a month before Stephen and I got married, and it was a month before he was getting remarried himself. And so I met with him and I made my amend. And I love how the program covers everything that might come up. And he really accepted all of my amend. He did have one comment at the end. He goes, well, I feel a lot better about all of this if you weren't getting remarried. Okay. And the program had taught me to just be quiet. He's entitled to his opinion and his reaction, and it's not my business. And I was able to just say nothing. Like, was I going to say, well, you're getting remarried, or, let bygones be, you should forgive, none of that was even on my lips or in my mind. It was just, my part is to just be still, and many years after that, because as I mentioned, that was 29 years ago, many years after that, in fact, his second wife, they were only married 5 years before she passed away. She got cancer and passed away at the age of 47. It was very young. And we were driving in the car someplace. I don't remember what the occasion was, because we didn't have a lot of occasion to be together alone. But it was many years after. And he said to me, Nancy, it wasn't all your fault. You asked me to go to counseling. And I said no. And I was able to also just listen and just and that to me, that was one of those examples where, like, yeah, the unexpected might happen. It might be years and years apart, but we never know. We do not know the effect that our lives have, especially on those that have suffered the throes of alcoholism through us. So this process, and as I mentioned, having a good sponsor and having the work solid up to making the amends, because there's nothing like actually making the amends. And it was the first step that I saw on the wall in my first meetings that I went to.
37 years ago today.
Oh, I guess that's true. But the first I ran through the steps on the wall without knowing anything about AA, and I hit on 9, and I was just like, oh no, never. I had that, but I don't, because with the mind that I had at the time, it was just like there won't be a way that this could happen, because the mind that I had was very, very limited, and this process opens the door to letting go of those limits. Okay, I'm done.
Well, thanks. So many of the amends I had were financial, and I couldn't get the thoughts out of my head. I can't afford to pay these people back. I can get to the point where I can meet with them, but I just felt it would be way better to put stuff off. And by myself, well, like Nancy, we had good sponsorship. And one of the things I couldn't see by myself was how we were to go and meet people. And it tells, I mean, it's just a specific direction in the book that I think can't be misunderstood. And it says, we go to him or them in a helpful and forgiving spirit. And I missed that line by myself. I would have never seen that line, even though I'm sure I've read it 100 times. But to talk to somebody, a sponsorship, spiritual advisor, mentor, whatever, what does a helpful and forgiving spirit look like? Because that's the direction we're to meet people with. And I got to find out that these amends there's much more to them than I just want to meet this person, cross them off my list, and go on to the next.
Good point.
And well, for a time, Nancy was talking about making amends with her ex-husband. I remember when I went to make amends to my ex-wife, and our ex-spouses knew each other very, very well. I mean, our families were pretty well. We were neighbors, and when I was ready to ask if she would meet me, which of course she did, but some of the backstory was she accused me of having an affair with Nancy for a couple of years before our marriage blew up. And my response, and this was before I got into AA at the last year of drinking to my first couple of years in AA, I'm lying to her. And I didn't know this from her point of view, but I'm making her be like crazy. Like I'm denying the very thing she's seen. And so when I was able to talk to her and say, all these accusations that you made, you were right on the money. I looked at you in the eyes and lied to you. And what I didn't know at the time was that validated for her. That was a validation that she couldn't have gotten anywhere else. Because, of course, in my alcoholic thinking, my alcoholism when I was actually drinking, my lying to her face, and my kids and all that stuff, it can make a person crazy. And I'm just trying not to get caught. And so I got to see that day, at any rate, some real healing in her. I got to watch it because in her mind, best that I can tell, it's, oh, I wasn't crazy. I did see what I saw. And I feel that was very helpful to her. And I got to see when I got sober and I'm up in amends, in my mind, there's like this fairness. Hey, I'm not drinking anymore and I'm doing good. Everybody should be happy for me. But that's not how it always works out. People remember being hurt, and they remember being betrayed, and they remember being lied to. And so no wonder they put the line in our book that there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. It should continue for a lifetime.
That's a great point. In fact, I was going to say that, the stories we've told are the day of us making an amend, but the amend doesn't end at the coffee shop when we leave. The amend is to continue, as you said, this period of reconstruction, that I have, not only with this person, but with anybody in my life, that hopefully I've learned, that much. That it continues.
So between us, we could go on for a long time about other specific amends. And to pass on what was passed on to me, we've done a lot of work with people in making amends and seen both sides where there's a refusal because in my mind, when somebody won't do it, it's just they're not ready yet. The step 8's not there. The fear's too great. I get all that. I've had the tremendous fears about doing it because I haven't made the amend. All I've done was study the concept of an amend, and of course we're told in step 8 to pray for the willingness until it comes. And there's a certainty in that direction until it comes. So the certainty is it will come if you want it. Okay. I think the beeper's about to go off, Lara.
Is it? All right.
And I know you've got cool men stories too.
Well, yeah, but this isn't about me. This is about you. Stephen and Nancy. That's so great. Well, yes. And I know there's a variety. I mean, I know direct amends is, and some of the things that have come up lately in these last few years is like, can you make an approach via text, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of a new thing. And make an approach to make amends. Like that's how people are communicating now. So I've had to try to talk to people about, what direct means, and yeah, I guess there's variables to all different kinds of amends and whether people can be seen and whether you should write them an honest letter. I mean, I was told to write letters to people I couldn't see and put them in a shoebox if I didn't know where they were, but that they were still alive somewhere in the world. And then, maintain a willingness to make amends to them should they start coming, into my life again or run across them somehow, which invariably always happened.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's a whole nother cool thing. And then, of course, making amends to people who have passed away. I know there's very powerful stories about that, but being willing to go to any lengths to make those amends. And of course, the financial amends are big. I know my first husband ended up paying back all the money he filed, in his bankruptcy, even though he didn't have to. That's, a noble pursuit. And how far are people, willing to go, or what kind of sponsor I suppose you have or something, I don't know. Anyway, I know that amends is amends is huge, though. This is where we get to, I remember Don P said, up to this point, we have an illusion about how we think we affected other people. This is when we get to hear exactly how
Yeah.
we affected other people. And I really like how this amends process isn't about me. It's about, I remember Jimmy Rector said one time, that you can restore faith in humanity with making amends. And which doesn't have anything to do with us, right? It has to do with how we can affect the world around us. That's what this is about. And I like that. So thanks, Stephen, Nancy.
And then the last thing that people from 2 weeks into AA to 20 years into AA, when they talk about all the promises coming true or some of them or whatever. And I remember Jimmy, he said many, many times, remember how the promises start if we're painstaking about this phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and since he was our sponsor, it's how we, he was filled with the Spirit. Yeah.
Oh, he absolutely was. And that was no mistaken whenever you saw him. So, okay, guys.
So good job, Lara.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
job
so much.
yourself. I'm going to cry.
See you tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Go Mariners.
Go Hawks.